Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new video, and today I'm going to be going over part 3 of my poker journey. Thus far, we've gone over part 1 and 2. There is going to be 4 parts, so this is part 3. If you haven't yet, go check out part 1 and 2 because you'll probably be lost. But let's just jump right back into it, shall we? At the end of part 2, we talked about how I had just met my wife. Things were on the upswing. Everything was going well. And let me talk a little bit more about that. After the 2015 World Series of Poker, I was completely even with my backer and I was on my own. So everything was just really going well. Um, I was living in Vancouver, like I mentioned. I had met my wife and I was grinding all of the high stakes PLO games, some mixed games. Anything that I wanted to play, I basically could because I was on an upswing and I didn't have any bankroll management really. If there was a high stakes game, I was in it. If I thought I had an edge, I was in it. It didn't matter. So I was dedicating most of my time to trying to uh, grind, get to those high stakes games and stay there. I think it's really easy for a lot of players to take shots at high stakes, but to stay at high stakes online is a really difficult task. And I don't know if I was completely ready for it yet because my mental game wasn't at the level of my strategy. So a lot of the poor decisions that I made with my bankroll, game selection, all these things kind of were an uphill battle for me. Um, I I went on Joey's podcast, like I mentioned in the last part, and this is when I was on my like upswing, right in the middle of just crushing everything. So it was fun to do that. And then going into 2016, I was on cloud nine. Like I mentioned, had been playing high stakes, went on the podcast, etc. Things were going well. I even started streaming a little bit. So for those of you that are familiar with my stream now, I actually first started streaming in 2015, 2016 when Jay Carver was streaming, and I would stream high stakes mixed games on live on Twitch. And I really enjoyed it, but it never really stuck for me because my priority was playing the high stakes games. I didn't really want to distract myself with streaming and stuff. But if I had actually just thrown myself fully into streaming, then I probably would have maybe had a bigger, growth back then because there weren't too many people streaming poker. So I decided I was going to go to Dublin, Ireland, because there was an EPT there, and I just happened to really want to go to Ireland. It was on my bucket list. I was already doing a bunch of traveling in 2014, and I thought this was a good opportunity to check out Ireland. Check off a city in my bucket list, and also play a poker tournament at the same time. Well, first off, let me say that again, I'm going to emphasize don't play online poker while you're trying to travel and enjoy yourself because it's really difficult to balance the two. I did do this, but I thought I could. And so what I ended up doing was I brought my laptop with me to Dublin. I had rented a hotel room with a friend that was also playing the EPT. And at the time, I was playing a high stakes 8 game mix on PokerStars. And so that game was running at up to 400, 800, which was a very big game. You needed about 8,000 minimum to buy in, and then 20,000 was the max buy in at the time, I believe. I'm not sure you could buy in for more than that, but I always tried to buy in for 8 to 10K if I was going to play in that game, which I probably should have never played it because I think you need millions to be playing that game, to be fair. And I had maybe a quarter of a million to my name at the point. So I only jumped in there when there was really big action. If there was a whale or someone that wanted to gamble it up or a bunch of weaker regs that was trying to maybe, start a game up for some reason or another. I don't know. Sometimes it happened, but that's the only times I would ever be in that game because it was just filled with crushers, some of the best 8 game players online at the time. And it just happened that while I was in Dublin, I opened up my laptop and I look, and there was this whale who I had been hunting, you could say. Um, and it was a very rare whale because, first of all, they loved to play high stakes. That's pretty rare in itself. Second of all, they love to play mixed games. Now, that is very rare because most of the big whales love to play No Limit Hold'em, maybe PLO, but to play 8 game mix was very, uncommon. And anytime this player would jump in the game, I would be there or I would try and get a seat. And then, of course, other regs would come and try and sit down. And so I was in Dublin. I open up my laptop. I see this guy. He joins 400, 800. And I say to myself, okay, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. This guy, I know some background story about this guy. They had played in Bobby's room. They had, acquired their money in some ways I'm not going to get into, but I think that this guy is not going to be around very long. And maybe they're going to even end up in jail someday. I don't know. But I needed to play in this game. I had a 250K bankroll. I told myself, listen, I'm just going to buy in for 40K max. If I lose it, big deal. It's not going to affect me in the long run because I can just rebuild it. I can play down at the 100, 200 game or the 40, 80 game and rebuild all of my losses. So what do? I jump in this game. I put in 10K buy-in and I sit down. The first hand, I get aces in No Limit Hold'em and immediately get stacked by a player, Paul Volpe, who was playing in those games with me. And it was just a complete cooler where they had flopped trips on a paired board versus my aces in a 80 big blinds, get it all in pot. 10K, poof, gone like that. Next hand, I get into another cooler in No Limit Hold'em where I have a flip with like queens versus ace king, and they hit a king, and it's another 10K out the door. At this point, I'm a little tilted, but I'm like, all right, I know this is part of the plan. If I lose 40K, I'm out of here. So I lose the 40K. And I barely even get any hands in with the whale that I was chasing. And they end up just leaving the game. Everyone snap leaves, and I'm just sitting there like, wow, I just lost $40,000 in about, I want to say, an hour and a half, maybe. And this was probably the most amount of money I had lost up until this point that quickly. I had had some big losing sessions in my time, but I was always either backed or it was over a really long period of time. I know I mentioned where I lost 30,000 at Parks Casino. That was, that was over a 12-hour long period. And it was up and down the whole time. This was just like a straight 40K loss, straight to the gut over an hour and a half. So it hit me hard. I didn't really enjoy that feeling, but I was surprisingly somewhat zen because I had actually just planned ahead that I was willing to lose 40K. I justified to myself this is going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity, so I took the shot. Unfortunately, it continued to go downwards. Anytime I tried to play in a game with this guy, anytime I got a seat in the higher stakes games, I would lose. I think a lot of it was run bad, but a lot of it was I was outclassed by some of the best players out there that I had to play with in order to play with this recreational player. So I got burned. I didn't manage my money very well. I was playing way outside of it. Um, and so that continued to go on. I think Dublin was in February or something like that. I had just been grinding on my own up until the World Series of Poker. And I'm coming into the World Series of Poker with maybe, half of my bankroll at this point. So I had 250K in February. Maybe I lost 100,000 over the next few months. And I'm going into the World Series of Poker with roughly 100K. I don't know, maybe less. And I say to myself, okay, I'm going to go into the World Series of Poker, but this time I'm not going to get any backing. I'm going to play all of the events on my own. I'm going to play the 1500s with a priority on all of the low buy-ins right? I'm not going to play any 10Ks because those are clearly outside of my bankroll and I don't want to get backing for them. It's not worth the hassle. I'm just going to play on my own. So I come up with a plan. I even hire a mental game coach, and I kind of get the idea that the mental game coach was telling me I had this issue where I would always try and reach for the stars like really quickly. I would go for the big score. So if I ever had an opportunity, I would try and play high. And they weren't wrong. Clearly, this was happening over and over again to me. So I decided, okay, this is the series where I'm just going to play all of the good value events, and that's it. So I go into the World Series. I play satellites to the 10Ks, which are like $500 mega tournaments, which are actually really good value for those of you looking for more mixed game action. I probably shouldn't tell you because it's going to hurt my action in the future, but those are really good value and they're really good action. So I was playing those. I was playing the 1Ks, the 1500s. I think I played a 3K at the highest buy-in point, but no more than one or two of those. And I think I had like 30,000 worth of my own action or something like that. And so I came in, I immediately won a mega satellite for 10K. And so it was a great start. I played another mega satellite and I won that. So I won two back-to-back mega satellites for I think it was like the Stud 8 or better 10K and like a Raz 10K or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it was a great start. I couldn't be happier. I was on my own money. This is all my own cash that I'm winning. And I start playing these low events. Um, Surely enough, people start approaching me. Hey, like, are you playing the 10K stud? It's this week. Like, you need to be playing this. You're such a good stud player. And of course, they're feeding my ego again. I'm thinking, oh God, I should be playing. I really had a good start. Like, I need to just take these big risks because I don't have so many opportunities in my life. And of course, I end up selling action to some 10Ks, but this time I keep 75% of myself and I'm only selling like 25% at face, which was also really silly to do. So I end up playing these 10Ks and I totally brick everything that I play that's a high stakes buy-in. So all of the hard work at the mega satellites, all of the 1Ks and the 1500s I was grinding cash games too that were going well. All of that just got nullified like that over, I think it was 3 or 4 10Ks that I played. I don't know. I probably would have profited around 50 or 60K for the summer, but because I got greedy and I wanted to play these high stakes 10Ks and everyone was feeding me all of this hype for being a great stud player. I felt like I had to play these games or I was just lighting money on fire. I come out, I think I was break even that year. And I was so disappointed that I didn't listen to my plan and I didn't stick with my bankroll management. But alas, I still had enough money to grind on my own. I still had enough like 60, 70K or something like that to play these mid-stakes PLO game online. I could rebuild my bankroll and I could get back to those high stakes games eventually. But the problem was the whale that was in those mixed games vanished. Like I had thought it was going to be like a shooting star moment where one moment this guy was in here gambling, losing $1 million, $2 million. I think they ended up losing something like $3 or $4 million online, and I just completely missed the opportunity to stay in those games and get a big piece of that. Instead, I was probably the only one in that 8 game that went on a downswing at that time. So at that point, mixed games were just gone. Like the high stakes weren't running anymore. The guy that was driving the action had left. And I had nothing else left to do other than get back on the grind and try and rebuild my bankroll so I could play some more high stakes games. So what did I do? I fully put myself into PLO. I worked with Munker Solver. I started running sims overnight, constantly. I came up with my own strategy. I came up with a study group. I really dedicated myself to PLO. And I felt like I was actually doing really well until I wasn't. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I was playing 1020 on my own. I was still playing above my bankroll. And I think I only had 50 or 60K. And I started losing quick at 2.5, 5.10. And I started getting worried because I didn't want to go broke again. The last thing I wanted to do was get a backer at this point. I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be on the grind. So I told myself, I'm just going to keep dropping down in stakes if I need to, and I'm just going to grind this out. While this was all happening, I was keeping a blog post on 2plus2 that a lot of people were viewing. And I would get messages all the time like, oh, love your blog post. Oh, like, I could put you in some games if you want. Like, you're definitely a winner. Like, keep at it. They were encouraging me when I was posting about my downswing, which was really nice. But ultimately, it was a distraction because constantly people kept telling me like, oh, it's fine, you'll do great, just keep playing those games, you're definitely winning, like, don't worry about it, when in fact I should have just taken a step down, maybe take some time off, not played a long time. And this led, unfortunately, to another backer. And I know you're probably screaming at your monitor saying, why do you keep getting backed? I think a lot of it had to do with just the mentality of being scared, right? Like, I had been broke numerous times and I just was so afraid of losing that money, even if it was 50, 60K. I didn't want to lose it. And at this point, it was even getting down to like 20 or 30K, and I could only play 2.5 PLO at the highest if I was being responsible. So I had just met my wife. I had, this relationship that I didn't want to come into my mind about, being broke and then being in a relationship and then trying to explain to her, why I can't pay rent or something. It's just I was so afraid. And so at the same time of this downswing, this guy who was also a high stakes PLO player, very well known in the community, said that they'd be happy to back me, put me in the 5, 10, 10, 20 games. They thought that I was a winner. They had been reading my blog posts, and they really respected my game. And so I was like, all right, you know what? Let's make an ironclad agreement here that if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be playing these mid-stakes games and there won't be any makeup. And I wrote that out in a text document. Um, it's a little blurry now, but they sent me a text document to verify all the stuff that we talked about. And it mentioned in the text document that I could leave the stake at any time. So I was like, all right, great. I know that there are staking deals with makeup, but this one mentioned in this text document that I can leave at any time, as long as we agree, and then that's it. And I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's play this stake. I'm all in. I'm gonna really work hard. I'm gonna run sims. I'm gonna play the good games. I'm not gonna play high stakes. Lo and behold, that recreational player comes back. So what do they play? PLO. And what do they play? Nosebleed mixed games. So at this point, I've been playing 5, 10, 10, 20 under this backing deal with this guy, and I'm actually doing really well. I'm beating the 10-20 games. I think I'm playing on like Bodog or something like that, which is an insanely soft site at the time. And this is when they were just getting into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was at like $1,000 at the time, maybe even less. So I had like a bunch of Bitcoin deposited on Bodog, and I was playing, and I would cash out and I would hold the Bitcoin for the backer. But things were going fairly well. And the issue was this whale, again, was just a one in a lifetime opportunity. And he started playing 200, 400 PLO. And so my new backer, noticed this and realized how big of a whale this guy was, and then started encouraging me to take really big shots to play with this guy. I was confident at the time, and of course I was just like, all right, yes, this is my opportunity again to get back all of my bankroll that I had lost when I first took a shot at him. I know he's a whale. I know I ran bad in that game. I'm gonna do it. Let's do it. So we both agreed I was going to play Nosebleed Stakes, and I played the highest games I had ever played online with this backer. I was playing 1K, 2K, Omaha 8 or better, which you can swing six figures in a day very easily at that game. Um, and I don't think I was ready for that variance, but I was just confident in my skill at the time after having studied so much. So I jumped in these games. I was playing with the whale. And I ended up losing. I lost a couple of sessions at 1K, 2K. I lost a couple of sessions at 400, 800, at 300, 600. And I was still playing 10, 20, and 510 normally. So this was a huge hit to me while I was playing these like mid stakes games, crushing them. But then I just got crushed at the absolute highest stakes. So of course this goes awry. And now I'm in a lot of makeup with the backer. We agree that I'm just going to keep grinding this out, and I continue to grind. November 2016, I become a Run It Once pro, and this is how I sustain this deal with my backer while still getting some income. Because at this point, when you're in makeup, it's really hard to not make money as a poker pro over a long period of time because your bankroll and your life roll just get drained, right? I wasn't taking any money out of this deal to pay rent or anything like that. That was all on me. So I took this job with Run It Once in order to pay rent and be more stable so that I could grind and get out of this makeup. The Run It Once job was great. I made videos. Some of them I made videos of the crazy games I was playing in at the time. And so I think a lot of people really enjoyed those. But I continued to play these 2017, these big Nosebleed games, right? We started, the whale would come in and come out, and I would play as much as I could against them. I even played 50, 100 heads up with another whale who was well known in heads up PLO. And so I played in those games. I think I made a little bit in those games, but it was those Nosebleed mix games where I really just got destroyed. And so I think I was stuck something like $250,000 in the deal. And it was just really unfortunate for like me at the time because I wanted to just play mid stakes PLO, not get involved in these high stakes games again. But of course, I just had this opportunity, and young me is like, all right, risk seeking, let's do it. I want this big score. I wasn't thinking about, well, if I'm stuck, 100K, 200K, how's that going to affect me long term? So I kept in contact with this backer. We always discussed what was going on. There was nothing, out of the ordinary between us, but I felt like at this point I wanted out of the deal because I didn't think it was going to be possible to regain these losses at the games that I was going to be able to play. It would have taken me 3 or 4 years, I thought, if I was going to play 2-5 PLO. It would have taken me at least 2-5, you probably can win around an average of 100K PL if you're one of the better players, maybe a little bit more. So it would have at least taken me 2-3 years. And I just didn't really have any money at the time. So I didn't want to just like live paycheck to paycheck from Run It Once. And I didn't want to drain my life roll consistently. I knew that I could still play 2-5 on my own money because I still had a little bit of money still. From previous bankrolls. And so I talked to the backer, and we had a misunderstanding that, in fact, I was actually playing under a makeup deal. And so it got messy because I looked at the text document that we signed, and it never said anywhere about being in makeup or whatever, and it just simply stated I could leave anytime. And so we ended up getting an arbitration to discuss this, and we both agreed to get a really well-known player to arbitrate between us so that we could come to an agreement. And we did. And the arbiter, I don't know, he said that, yeah, this is kind of a weird situation where I can see this being a misunderstanding between both of you. Let's do like, okay, CG has to play 100K hands. left on the deal so that at least you can make back some EV or something in the deal before it ends. So that's what we agreed on. It was something along those terms. Obviously, we both weren't really happy about it, but I was willing to just keep playing and keep grinding because we had the guy decide what was going to happen, and I was fine agreeing to whatever they said. So I continued to play under the backer. And then this led up to the World Series of Poker. So this is where it gets crazy because 2017, I'm playing Nosebleed games and I'm playing mid-stakes PLO. And then all of a sudden I realize like this is maybe not going to be sustainable. I want out. We got the arbitrator. I should really know that word, to come up with a solution for us. We do. Now I'm going into 2017 thinking, okay, I have all this makeup, but you know what? This is where I make my money. I need to play the World Series of Poker. I'm going to play as many good value, big events for this backer so I can get, some of this makeup done, and maybe I'll even get out of makeup over a summer, right? So I make a schedule of 10Ks. I make a schedule of, all of the good value mixed game tournaments about a couple of months out. While this is happening, I build up a relationship with a very well-known poker player. And during that time, we discussed strategy, and they really kind of take, I don't know, it was a relationship where we just would talk strategy. If I saw them on a poker tour, I would say hello. We would chat about whatever. And we're very friendly back and forth. I played with them a little bit in the 400, 808 games online. And yeah, that was that. Once the World Series came around, there was always something that happened before the World Series of Poker started. There was something called the 25K fantasy draft. And this was run every summer before the World Series as like a fantasy tournament for poker players, essentially. So you would pick a bunch of poker players that you thought would do well at the World Series of Poker, and the player with the best score of whoever their team they picked would win the tournament, right? And so they ran this every year. And it was kind of like, I don't want to say a prestigious thing, but it was definitely like you felt like you made it if you got picked for this thing because people believed in you and you thought like, okay, maybe I am one of the better players in the field, and you would be more confident. And so up until that point, I had actually been picked a bunch of times. But this time, the player that I had made a relationship with decided, okay, I'm going to draft you this year for fantasy. And so they did. They drafted me for fantasy. And the thing about getting drafted for this tournament is that if they pick you, they want you to play as many events as possible, because in order to win the fantasy tournament, the player that they pick has the best chance of getting points by playing as many tournaments and getting as many cashes as possible. So this player picks me, and then now they're like, okay, what do you want to play? If you want to play anything, let me know. And I was like, I want to play everything because this is going to be, a big summer for me. And so I talked to my backer about this, and I say, hey, listen, this guy wants to put me in a lot of these crazy events. Do you want the action? And he's like, no, that's okay. Let's just play like the high value ones and keep those on, the backing deal. So I said, great, that's awesome. Now I have this huge opportunity with this person who's going to put me in all of the biggest tournaments at the World Series of Poker. And then I can still play the high value ones for my backer, and there's no like contention there. I'm going to get out of makeup. I'm going to make a ton of money. I have a free roll for all of these huge events with this one guy, and I'm going to definitely do well with all of these high value schedules with my backer. So what do? I play everything. I play the, all the 10Ks. I play the 25K six max no limits. I play the 25K PLO or something like that. And I even played the 50K Poker Players Championship, which is one of the tournaments that I had always wanted to play ever since being a mixed games player. One of my best friends, Matt Ashton, had won it. I can't remember what year it was, but it was amazing to like be a part of that, and rail and watch and support him. And I had studied with all of my friends in mixed games, and I'd seen them play it, and I thought that I needed to play this event, and it was a dream of mine to play it. And the guy who had drafted me for fantasy was like, "Okay, I'll put you in that," and I was like, "Oh my God, it's actually happening." So I'm super excited. I get to play all these events, and what happens? I literally brick everything. It's the worst summer I have at the World Series of Poker ever. I think I played at something around 250,000 worth of events, between playing the 50K, all the 10Ks, the main events, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and at this point, I'm like, I just want everything to be over. How did I get into this mess? Luckily, I had made a deal with the guy who had drafted me that I told him, hey, listen, I appreciate your offer, but I would only play for a complete free roll because at this point I have a backer already. I don't want to play, I don't want to risk anything. So they did give me the free roll. So I was not on the hook for anything with them. I was just still playing out my stake with the backer. And I'm going into the main event now. I brick everything. I'm playing the main event for my backer, and I'm actually doing really well, right? I've actually made a few deep runs in the main event prior, and so now I'm getting confident. I end the day with like triple starting stack. Day two, there's like a break, and I decide I'm gonna just go back to the Rio for the break, maybe like see some friends or something like that. And what happens? I get into a car accident. Um, I get into a car accident at the Rio the day before day two. And I actually, it's a really bad accident. A woman drives through a red light, clips a taxi. Um, so it's like, okay, let me see if I can uh, paint a picture here. So going into the Rio, there is a perfect like plus sign cross. There's a highway that runs across it, and then to get to the Rio, you have to go um, horizontally across from another highway. So there's a ramp coming in here. So the taxi was coming into the Rio, and this woman ran a red light uh, at full speed, was just kind of unaware, I guess, of what was happening. And I was going towards the highway. So the cab was coming towards me. I was going towards the highway. And this woman comes barreling down, running a red light, clips the cab. The cab hits my car, um, and just misses my passenger door. It actually hits the front of the hood. I hit my head against the window. I was holding on to the wheel. The wheel turns, and I think I may have sprained or even slightly fractured my wrist. Um, and it all happened so fast. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, what just happened? Like, someone just ran a red light and hit us. Um, and so everyone somehow is miraculously okay. I'll show you guys some pictures of the accident in a minute. But at this point, I get a concussion because I hit my head against the window. But at the time, I don't really like realize this because the adrenaline's pumping, right? So the tow truck comes, I deal with my insurance. Everything's kind of like my adrenaline's just pumping. I can't sign anything with my wrist. I don't know why, but every time I try and write, it just won't work. I guess I had probably, sprained it or fractured it because it was shaking and I couldn't figure out why. The adrenaline was pumping so hard that I just didn't feel the pain of the actual like injury. So It wasn't until later that it started hurting, and I realized, oh man, that probably is a fracture. Um, so at this point, everything, I signed the paperwork. I see the woman in the car. She's okay. The taxi driver is okay. Um, and she's just like really apologetic. She just didn't understand what was happening. I don't know what or why, but anyway, that was a whole crazy thing. And then I go back home after all of this. Uh, and I'm kind of worried because I think I have a concussion at this point. I can't really think straight. Things are kind of blurry once in a while. And I'm thinking, all right, I have to go to the ER. So I drive out to the ER, and uh, there aren't too many great places to go in Vegas at 1 o'clock at night, but I'm trying to find a place. I don't know what ER it was, but I went to an ER, and I go to the ER, I sit down, I get called, and I say, I think I have a concussion. I think I might have like fractured my wrist or something. And the guy looks at me and goes, well, there's an 8-hour wait. So do you think you really need to sit here for a concussion that they won't really help you do anything for? And I was like, what? Like, aren't you supposed to help me? This is a hospital. And so he was like convincing me to leave the hospital. So I was like, all right, I guess not. I can't really wait 8 hours. I have a main event to play tomorrow. So I went home and went to bed and woke up and went to go play the main event the next day. At this point, I had an interaction with the initial guy who gave me the free roll about like settling up all of the chips that they gave me and stuff like that. And I was like so out of it that I forgot like what the number was. Um, and so I went back and looked at my spreadsheet and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I think they owe me money or I owe them a little bit of money after all the cashes and stuff. And so I couldn't figure it out because at this point my brain was like still super foggy. And I just went through this whole experience and I'm about to play the main day two. And so I'm like, all right, maybe I just owe this guy a little bit of money from the cash or whatever. So I tell them I'm going to give you this much money. I think I owe you this money, which in fact, it turns out they owed me the money. And so I ended up giving away more money than I should have to this guy that I had a free roll on. So I literally paid him to play tournaments on a free roll at the end of it all. I never mentioned it to him because I was just like, whatever, it was only a few $1,000s or something. But it was just so tilting that I needed that money at the time. I was like, all right, whatever, as long as it's over. And then I end up busting the main event after I think making a cash. I don't know. I think I got like 300th or 400th that year. But it was a nightmare. It was the worst year I think I'd ever played poker in my life, between losing at those Nosebleed games online, then having the biggest opportunity and breaking it all at the World Series. So I ended the stake late 2017 after the World Series. Like I said, ultimately, we ended it with no hard feelings because we both understood there was a misunderstanding. The bonus, though, was that since I was playing on Bodog and I kept all of my money in Bitcoin, by the end of the stake, I had just had a bunch of Bitcoin in the account. So that ended up like 20xing or something. And I think he made back all of his money, the 250K in Bitcoin that I was just holding for him, because I was holding something like 60 or 70,000 in Bitcoin. And so that like doubled or tripled and ended up breaking him even, I think, on the whole deal. So it ended up, neutral, I guess. It was such a crazy experience. And I can't believe I ended up in another backing deal. And so this leads us back to early 2020, 2018. I'm done with this. I don't ever want to see another backing deal again. I just want to be back on my own. I go back to grinding small stakes. I'm playing like 1-2. I don't care. I'm just happy to have no responsibility outside of being on my own. And I'm just grinding PLO. It's at this point that I get married to my wife. It's amazing, best day of my life. I couldn't have asked for a better wedding. Had a blast, had all of my friends flown in from New York, and we had it in Vancouver. It was a great time. And yeah, that was the upswing part of the last, 3 or 4 years of this story. But poker was an absolute train wreck the whole time, unfortunately. Just the early part of 2015 into 2016, and then after that, it was just a big downswing. So I just continued to grind small stakes online on my own money and start to rebuild my bankroll. And I basically swore off backing for life until a little bit later on. These are a few pictures. This was me in the 2015 World Series of Poker, the stud 10K. This is another picture of, I think, another 10K. This was my post trying to build up my bankroll from 500 PLO to 5,000 PLO. If you guys are interested in that, you can probably find it on 2plus2 somewhere. But basically posting about my downswing and how I wanted to get back and go on the right track, et cetera, et cetera. Some more pictures of me playing the World Series of Poker. And then on the right here is the car accident. There's the cab that was crossing the intersection there. You could see the stoplight on the top right there. And the middle is my car, where you can see they hit the wheel and the front end, and the bumper just came clean off. And because the wheel turned really quickly, that's when my wrist got hurt because I was holding onto the wheel. And then the bottom picture is the car that had just went straight ahead, and they somehow lost their rear end because they spun into me from the side. But here is the happy part. Grace and I getting married in Vancouver. It was wonderful. We had our dogs in one of the photos. And that is going to be it for part 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed part 3. It was another roller coaster, as you can imagine. I hadn't really learned from my mistakes, I guess. I still kept repeating them, and as a lot of players know, it's the most frustrating thing in the world to constantly repeat your mistakes. So I like to think now that I will never, ever, ever make any of these mistakes again. And hopefully me making these videos is going to keep that solidified. But going into part 4, I will continue the story up until about modern day, so you guys get an idea of where I'm at now and what my plans are for the future. So stay tuned if you're interested in that. If you guys made it this far, you're clearly interested in seeing the rest of the story, so please like and subscribe. And I'll see you again for part 4 of my poker journey. All right, guys, have a great night, and I'll see you soon on the next video. Peace.